I'm Peter Jones, a Distinguished University Professor of Systemic Design at Tecnológico de Monterrey, and still Associate Professor appointed at OCAD University, the founder of the Redesign Network, Redesign Research, which as a full-time professor now, I don't have the time for the practice, so it's kind of all rolled into, now at Tech, where I am full-time. Kristel is a business partner at Namon, one of the most influential European design firms located in Brussels. She's a professor, visiting professor of systemic design, product service systems, University of Antwerp, and as co-authors of the book Design Journeys Through Complex Systems. This book has been out now for 2 years, and we've actually published updates to it after the first year. So we're constantly getting feedback from the field, from the online courses, from use in training with students, and from our own exploration of it. So I'm going to present the first part of this here, and then Kristel's going to take you through the tools. We'll have or I'll give you the agenda here in a second, but just wanted to give you an update for us. So there will be some participation. So the Systemic Design Toolkit, now as I mentioned in the previous session, for those that are joining us here, this was developed as a methodology and a library of tools that were developed from systems thinking applications and systems theory. That is, each tool has an academic reference and some grounding in systems theory. It was the first development of its kind to create canvases and templates as a whole series that could express the range of systems practices from in collaborative design tools that can be used by groups and in collaboration for people. So it's created by Kristel at Namon and launched in 2016 at the RSD Symposium in Toronto, and then developed from there in collaboration with several groups, me with Systemic Design Association, Alex Ryan with Mars, with the Shift-In, which is involved from the very beginning. So it has had a lot of socialization, a lot of testing, and a lot of updating. That is, when we aren't always satisfied with a tool in its first use, and have revised them over the development from 2016. So the ones that are in the book were fairly stable, but we updated Design Journeys, as I said, about a year in, with actually maybe 20% of the book, but we had some corrections, updates to cases. We thought editing the text so that it would, but there are no new tools in the book. There is a free download. In fact, we usually put a link to that. The Systemic Design Toolkit, as you see here, is available for download for people who haven't seen it at systemicdesigntoolkit.org. And there are 30 tools in the book, which, as you see connected here in the image, these are connected in different ways, where the data that's gathered from collaborative sessions using the different frameworks feeds through from tool to tool and across the 7 stages of the methodology. Today, we don't really have a workshop. Originally, we thought we could do that. We don't have the time to do really full workshopping of it, so we're calling it a talk shop. There will be an exercise component, and so we plan to explore the methods by which today in this session, several new tools these are methods for organizational leaders might use to assess trends, build strategies by understanding the strategic options over over the timeframes of innovation and to envision changes to industry, not just changes to to the impact of a product service system or the impact in a local ecosystem, for example, from a municipality, for example, but for larger scale impacts, which we've adapted other tools in the past to express. So the three new tools we call the value landscape, the waves of systemic innovation, and the system innovation roadmap. We have, see, a link to the Miro board, which I may have to go back to when I launch the board. And Kristel, I think we can put the link to the board in the chat when we get to that. I'm not seeing the chat right now, so just wanted to remind that. Our agenda then I have the presenting the overview here, and then a bit of a case study of a current project with, or it's a recent project that has continuing future potential, and it's proved as a case study with the Catalyst Social Finance community from Canada. And then we'll explore the three tools, the value landscape, waves, innovation waves, and system innovation roadmap, as with this Catalyst case as the base kind of case study for that. We'll have some time for feedback and reflection at the end, so we want to end with plenty of time before the hour. Probably 10 minutes for questions, and then we can go over if there are more questions. So for those that are new, there's a 7-stage methodology that is helpful to picture because these tools fit within 2 of the stages that are in the more design thinking aspect of the methodology. Across the 7 stages, we see these as 3 that are more systems thinking led, so and they're not in sequence. So 1 and 3 and 5 are more based in some classical system models that have been translated through to designerly practices in the canvases available in these tools. And 2, 4, and 6 are more designerly, co-design, or based in user experience, human-centered design, and service design background to and futures thinking. So from design practices that are interpreted with systems thinking supporting them, with stage 7 fostering the transition as the stage for integrating them for implementation. And so I won't say too much about the other stages: framing, listening, understanding. But these 3 tools are, as we consider that they're used more by organizational leaders, could be used by teams and organizations for creating models of the expansion of value and for larger scales of value. This is from some work that we've done on total system value, for example, and the different type of logic that it might have. That this really fits in stage 4, envisioning the desired future, as well as where we have the system value proposition today. And so this is kind of an extension of that tool and a translation of it for as you'll see, that for ecosystems or industry impact, to clarify that as a type of landscape model. And the waves of systemic innovation is it's very much based on 3 horizons, and so 3 horizons lives in stage 4. And then in planning the change process, which is developing the organization and the team and theory of change. And so the system innovation roadmap also picks up on that. So the case study, as I had indicated from the Catalyst Social Innovation Finance, is a social network and a collaborative platform in Canada that has had its first major conference this year as well. It has been developing for about 2 years or more so far from different social innovation intermediary groups that are building up the capability to provide financial services to social startups, social innovation projects, and community capital, community-based projects. So it works through a number of different organizations, but as you can think of it as a multi-year initiative. So it does have a long time horizon. We have done 3 horizons work with Catalyst. The strategic intent of the project is to develop a financial ecosystem and policy infrastructure within Canada that can support social startups and scale up from place-based, for example, community capital projects in Ontario primarily, where Catalyst has been located, and it's scaled to Canada. And so this is developing some of its goals, developing an ecosystem that could support this type of scale in Ontario and other provinces for financial infrastructure, for community capital, which could extend beyond the financing that could, for example, could be available through other types of banking. So it's extending the types of financial services that are available to social organizations, and extending beyond like foundations and credit unions and traditional banking services, as well as government grants. So it can actually use that type of funding, but be provided in different intermediary structures, and to facilitate knowledge sharing among what they call place-based capital and the capacity organizations that can help the different organizations that are using the capital, and then engage new community and social finance organizations. So it may seem kind of abstract because there are some new concepts here, and it would be new in Canada too. It's extending beyond that. I said there was a 3 horizons work that we've done, and so this is a distillation of dozens of ideas that are mapped out across horizon 1, 2, and 3 that you might consider for horizon 3, or the third horizon here might be 15 to 20 years out, with horizon 2 being a little more in the near term. That a lot of these potentials are highly possible to develop, given the support within Canada for this. And so some of the key ideas I'll just point to that you can see maybe shared in the color. Horizon 1 being the current kind of era that we're trying to shift from the problems of the current era and to move into horizon 2, or the more the innovations in social finance capital that may shift financing for social and community capital to new modes. Is that today that there are in H1 that communities and that ecosystems and communities themselves are not valued as stakeholders in financial networks. That is, they don't have the kind of standing that financial institutions might, and always need intermediaries or fiscal sponsors and things like that. And ecosystems themselves, that is, natural ecosystems, don't have this type of support or standing. And so this is actually one of the ideas that might shift into the future. That legacy business models are an impediment to developing a new system. So there's some competition over the next few years between existing financial services and some of these new concepts. And there's limited access for smaller organizations and community organizations to some of the new financing, and inequities are built into the system as well that we have to also transform in horizon 2. So as you follow the blue text, I said these are summary statements that actually summarize from a dozen to maybe 20 different statements each Innovating new business models is important. Will be part of Horizon 2, creating those and testing them over this curve up to the next 5 years to 10 years, evaluating the ecosystems and communities across the provinces as stakeholders themselves, developing capacity through innovation leadership, and then into Horizon 3, multi-capital funding, and an ecosystem for beyond even financial capital, and different types of funding, valuing the ecosystem itself, right? Social capital, community capital. And the Catalyst community has evolved to a national platform. It's become, what's being measured reflects the societal priorities and so on. So there's some very good ideas in the 3 horizons, but and so in our tools, we've started to translate. I mean, we've tested it with other cases as well, but this is one, kind of the Catalyst social finance will translate well across these different tools. We've considered some other cases, but this is one that actually has some meat and bones to it and can be used today. And so found that we think that it works differently to map it out to these tools compared to existing tools. And I would say the real purpose here isn't to add new tools to the Design Journeys platform. We're considering, in a sense, what new tools could be translated from what we've learned in Design Journeys that senior managers, organizational leaders, and so you'll find if you attend on Tuesday's session in Flourishing Enterprises, as we've worked with municipal leaders, for example. I mean, we have to translate the systemic design kind of knowledge base and the approach to the design tools and some of our own language into language that can be understood and used effectively by different levels of management, all the way, to the level of CEO or executives, as well as to the participants. And those participants could include community or public stakeholders. So we have the challenge of translating somewhat complex concepts, but based on what we've learned from the other tools, but in ways that we think will resonate well with leaders, and that they will be confident to use, and that they could even lead with facilitators some of these tools. So that's also part of our motivation for each of these tools, has a kind of motive. And so for the value landscape, the gap that it fills is that there are no tools we know of for example, industry business models. Like even the flourishing business model is a business model for an organization. Perhaps its impact on the industry can be mapped out, and especially things like the actors map, rich context, you could do that, but it doesn't contain that within a single model. Found that the system value proposition, also in this stage 4 in envisioning the desired future, it doesn't envision the value co-creation for how value co-creation could shift an industry and be seen as changing, moving an industry towards flourishing, so that you aren't just the only company, like Patagonia might have been, or Interface Carpet might have been 20 years ago, the only company in the industry moving towards strong sustainability or flourishing. We want to be able to envision how the industry will shift, or the ecosystems that you're also improving and touching on. So the perspective of the value landscape is this impact on industry and ecosystem. And the 2 tools, the system value proposition from the organization's offer, can work with its impact on the value landscape. So in a way, one is more like the value proposition for what's being created, co-created like as a service offering, and then this for how that the value landscape, for how that value expands. Let's see if I can into the industry. So see if I can zoom in a little bit. You can see there some of the concepts, even from the three horizons, can be translated as points of value in the value landscape. But also the Catalyst project also developed a value proposition model. So this does translate. So Kristel, would you like to walk us through how the tool works and to take that from here?
Yes, basically for you who have the book, who know I will share my screen.
Oh, if you'd like to share, yeah. I just did that automatically as we are used to shifting.
Okay, so the value proposition, which is in the book, basically has also economic and social value, but the two others are ecological and psychological value creation. But we thought that, like, for industry leaders, it's not enough. We can still use that. But so we added this one, who gives another lens, a technological lens and a governance lens on top of this. And then, so you look at the value you want to create on the different levels for the citizens, for the consumers, for the organization, the company, for the ecosystem, the industry, for society, for the whole planet, all living things. And then the idea is to together think, what is the value we want to create with this? And Peter, you did the exercise for the catalyst. So maybe you can quickly talk us through the findings here. You are mute, Peter. Peter, you are still on mute.
Thank you. Yes, if you keep it up, I don't know if we need to zoom in, but if we can look at from the center, the citizen or the consumer, if you will. We have the development of a platform for community investment that citizens and individuals could be part of these groups, and that they can contribute value economically and societally and socially at that level. And that value is provided to the individual who's in the community as you expand. So there's still a human in the center in this model. The organization has in Catalyst the value of sharing that economically it is much more equitable, and it has as a goal to expand kind of the equitable access to capital across communities, and also the increased agility for new projects that don't have to go through kind of the go through banking and pitches, with traditional financiers or foundations and competitions, but can be created within communities that have their own needs and recognize that value. And then there's capacity building within Catalyst as an organization. So this is still in the up, moving through the upper left. As you go into the industry itself, as you will, the innovating new business models should then create models of value creation that have impact in communities that not only other communities in Canada and province, as Catalyst starts to scale more, but could also be could certainly be shared, publicized, and learned from other communities in other parts of the world, probably the US being right next to Canada and having some similar interests as well, and having impact on then looking here also integrating or having value with other social enterprises and entrepreneurs, other types of organizations, social purpose organizations, not-for-profits, and developing these approaches for community action that can become new business models that will themselves have impact. So then the impact going all the way to the upper left is across society and all living things, if you will. developing across the society, a multi-capital funding ecosystem addressing economic equities and community finance. And then, in the upper right, you have outcomes that will have certain technological impacts as well, expanding to Web3 platforms and innovation for network building and expanding the social networks and so on. So you get an idea that a larger scale business model, if you will, can be created in its complexity and envisioned based on the goals that have been developed as the goals and strategies of an organization of this type that is interested in scaling and being able to demonstrate that its theory of change or its impact could have these that could propagate through these different levels of the system. And so this would be a first visioning tool. This would be before you really had that whole theory of change worked out that we envision is more in the systemic innovation roadmap. Okay.
Okay, so the next one we explored is what we call the waves of innovation. And it's basically inspired by the Three Horizons, but we find that the Three Horizons is quite difficult for entrepreneurs, for managers to understand, because they normally don't think that long. They don't think over a period of 20 years, but like 3 to 7 years. And so we kind of made another version of the Three Horizons, which we call the waves of innovation, where we take two waves, so a midterm wave and a long-term wave. Mid-term could be like 2 to 3 years, and then the longer term, 5 to 7 years. Typically, the timing manages thinking. And so the idea is to think about different waves of innovation. The blue one is what we call contra-innovation of systemic innovation. The red one is what we call exnovation. The green one is intra-innovation. And then the gray one is shadowing of innovation. And so these are the explanations of the four waves. So systemic innovation, also called contra-innovation, is really innovating in a new way, in a more systemic way, towards a desired ideal future. And so not to try to innovate as usual, but really try to come to this ideal future. Exnovation is the process basically of releasing things, of stopping things that are not going in the right direction, that are not going towards this desired future. Then intra-innovation, the green ones, are all the processes or ideas or products you develop internally to help you to reach, again, with your organization, this desired future. And then the fourth one, what we call the shadow innovation, is having alternative innovations where you try to release the capitals, to rethink your organization again. And so the idea is then to try it out in Maro in a couple of minutes, but first Peter will explain you how he applied this on the Catalyst case.
Yes, thanks. So going back to the same case, if you will, the same content, even it's we can and so this is somewhat color coded as well. So it comes drawn out of the Three Horizons that you saw as the baseline, and so I've changed the language in some cases here because this is really a different translation now to how innovation would occur in Horizon 1, Horizon 2. So the innovation curve here in Horizon 1 is actually like moving from your point today within the next 5 years or so as Horizon 1, where you actually are innovating and developing a new financial mediator business model, and testing out those business models. So that's kind of at the start of the curve, moving up. And this is drawing from blue, so from Horizon 2, and moving that forward and bringing that, you know, into today in a more entrepreneurial way, developing a structures for a platform for community investment and community finance across Canada. And then at the top of that curve, where it becomes really stabilized, is that platform becomes fully integrated with an application review platform, so people can apply online. It has, it considers your province, your community, you know, so it becomes really, you know, a working system. And in and of itself, you know, with today's technology that's well supported, that is within Horizon 1, that is within the types of structures that are actually available today. Then in the intranovation, that's the internal development cycle. So there needs to be a strong board and a network and a social finance lab to test out the functions and how business models are being responded to, et cetera. And then the exnovation, there needs to be alternatives to the current business models that start to drive the old business models, at least to different, to be used by companies, but not by social innovation projects, for example. And it might start to change that and shift, starting to promote and advocate that, you know, to be able to shift away from older business models and to move and test new models going forward. And so that's a big part of this kind of contrast or the translation. And moving to the right, you see the shadow innovation, be that the things, so that the downward curve, then this might be competing, but also is going on at the same time as we continue, is that there could be multiple initiatives that also expand, including some that compete. There could be legacy banking services could either compete, but they'll also perhaps decline or change in terms of the impact on investment and capital services. And then this second wave then starts to pick up from the existing platform at some point. And so this is also dependent on strategy. It's like, how long should this take? And so the social finance can become more self-generating through more and more investment. It builds on itself. And then the intranovation, that green cycle, is that could be a Canadian-wide board concept from across the communities that is perhaps more distributed, using technology to sustain the leadership, and a different wave of exnovation as well, where maybe the government support is now replaced by foundations and investors, and that the government funding isn't needed as much for the community capital, and it starts to really build on its own. Gives you an idea of how how that might be translated in, and realize that sometimes finance might seem a little abstract, but we wanted to give you the chance to also work with this concept in the Miro board. So Kristel,
Yes, so what we are going now, we will put you in breakout groups of 5, and the idea is to just discuss the tool together and maybe already start from a concept. It could be the Catalyst case or one of your own, and see how this works. So you start with wave 1, you think what you will do as a systemic innovation, then you think about you go to the exnovation, you think about what should be phasing out, and so on and so on. And we go to each of them. We don't have a lot of time, so I propose we do this in 10 minutes. I will put the link again in the chat for those who missed it, and you can all go to the Miro board. Peter, can you then open them, the breakouts?
Peter, you're mute again. You're still muted.
I'm setting up the groups now. I think we can, we've got 4 to 5 per group. So here are 10 groups, okay. And so these will be random. And so in any of the groups, one way to start is if there's a person that has a current project who would like to try this on, and you're kind of keen to try it, feel free to be the leader in that group. If there are two, then that's fine too. But also, see what ideas you have, see if there's somebody that already is kind of ready to go. If not, like try the catalyst, try the community capital financing or kind of social innovation financing. That is actually a pretty big area right now. And so just, try on your systemic design innovation thinking here. So I'll open the rooms and we'll visit a couple. Okay. That looks like that's working. There are a few people left either haven't gone into the rooms, but so. No, and Kristel just let's see, how's our time right now? We're at 40 at the hour, so
There's still that 9 minutes, so
okay.
yeah, I put the timer on the board.
Yes, okay, right. Mhm. Yeah, I'll manually close them. I could have set the timer, I think, in the breakout room as an option, but yeah. Okay. There are a couple rooms that are pretty small, and so that might be, in fact, there's one, Brad, room 8, for some reason, is only one person, so maybe we should move him to room 7. Try that. It's great you can do that. All right. Right. Yeah, Birger's in that room. So Kristel, it looks like you're kind of assigned or going to room 4. It says Kristel not joined, but
Oh. Yeah, I declined it. I thought it was not very useful to be in the room.
oh yeah.
Mhm.
Well, if it's a very small group, it might help them just to get a start if there's only two people or something, just to make sure they're okay. Oh, here's one that needs group. Hope I did this okay. I don't set up groups that often. I'm not usually the Zoom facilitator, but yeah, it looks like they're assigned okay.
Yeah.
It looks all right, Peter, but there's one person in room 1, and that's the only person there, as far as I can see. We want to move Karen to somewhere else.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Okay,
You want me
good.
to- I can move her. For
Yeah,
them.
okay, great. All right. Right. Yeah. Yeah, originally it looked like there were other people that were going to be in that room and they either dropped. And so
Yeah,
the other
the classic paradigm, right? Of
Yeah.
the main plenary ends, so people vanish.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny that the shadows are in room 1. Okay. Yeah. All right. Thank you. Thanks for the help. Okay, let's see how our time is. We're about as expected, probably 5 minutes over, but that's also have a little bit of overtime, right? That we can go over in the last session.
Yeah, I'd say you're okay.
Yeah, it's really a stretch for me here, 2 hours even behind Eastern time or 3 behind you know, many hours behind others to think this is the end of a full, you know, a full day of sessions already. So, all right. Or its own track. Okay. Are we what, 5 minutes in yet? I'm going to drop in on a room just to listen in.
I didn't get into a room.
Oh, who's that? Hi.
Mackenzie.
Oh, okay. I don't s- um I don't see you.
I am.
Oh, okay, yeah. I mean, I don't know why you weren't automatically unless, okay. Ah, other people might be coming and going, so let me see if I can find you, Kinsey. Okay.
I was briefly, and then no one was there, and then it booted me.
Oh, right, right, okay. Yeah, I'm looking for your name on the list. Don't see it yet. Can I actually put in, no, oh, sorry, wait, sorry, wrong room. Um, Hey, Ryan?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I just put Kinsey in the waiting room instead of
Oh,
instead of
okay.
a breakout room. I did not see her on the list of the
I'll go back.
breakouts. Yeah, so
I saw that come up and I was confused because there is no waiting room, but
okay, I don't see her on the list to put her
back.
in. Yeah, participants.
Hi, Kinsey. You were erroneously assigned the waiting room.
Oh, there it says move to. Okay, I'll put you in the room. I
Great,
put
thank
you in the room. Okay, yeah, there. I see. Sorry for the muddle on that. Now I see I have to go into the participants and find her there. So, okay. Well, hmm.
There was no one in there either.
Oh,
That's, I can
okay.
just wait for the report back.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, we're probably almost done. Uh, Sorry for the randomness of how Zoom assigns things. And also, though, yeah, I don't do this very often, so I probably should have looked to curate the groups a little bit more, but it's a pretty large group. All right, it's a quick breakout too, so. So do you have any thoughts on this? It looks like a couple other people are now joining the main room too, that maybe it didn't.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm in this informal complexity complex systems group. We were just talking yesterday, and I've talked about how I think in terms of application of this sort of thing, like systemic change, and I think in terms of micro, meso, macro, and then also meta. I think there's another level that underpins my research, but woman asked, but how can you construct those different ways of interacting within an organization to undo the norms that are siloed without totally breaking things? And this kind of illustrates that, in that there are the waves that kind of go up, and then what I was trying to explain to her is what this looks like to me, where there's the gray line that kind of is a decline, but it's gradual. So it's like building alternative structures at the same time as they get stronger than the other ones can kind of move down. And in that space is where I see interventions and trying to get buy-in at the level of organization. Because what I've experienced and seen is that there can be some entrenched people that are like really invested in the old way. And then that gives it time to kind of settle out, or rehire or whatever. So this is really helpful in terms of illustrating the way I think and how I'm trying to articulate it to other people.
That's useful feedback. We haven't rolled it out yet. This is still, we're basically testing the concept here. And so get to be able to imagine how leaders, managers, and teams would use a tool like this for leading to the discussion about the different, the shape of future programs that could be have innovation impact, and to expand their definition of what could be considered innovation, the internal changes and developments, the intra-innovation, which we think would be more helpful to learn and expand upon. And
I'd love to talk to you about that aspect, because part of the systems thing is it's really out there for the, I don't want to say average person, but the persons that's in an organization, like an individual contributor, even a leader, like to translate this into, okay, so what does that mean for me in terms of application and implementation? And that's a really big leap. And so I see this as having a lot of potential in doing that, and giving it some visualization, maybe to iterate on, so it's not the full big picture, but kind of a microcosm of the process, so they can digest it at a smaller level. And that's a point where I think it's a big buildup in organizations as they move from one stage in their life cycle to another one.
Peter, you should close the groups.
Oh, I did.
You did close them? Oh.
Yeah, everyone should be back.
Okay, let's move on then.
Yeah. Are they, so who would like, is there anybody who would like to share for this? I mean, we'll talk about all the tools at the end, but just from this experience, is there anyone who would like to share from their group experience?
I can share.
Yeah, from the tool. Thanks. Yeah. What did you think of the use of the tool?
10 minutes was a very short time. But fortunately, we had Catherine in our team, who is creating resilience for heat response from health perspective. So services that support urban groups in heat crisis. And we tried to map the data she has right now from this challenge in our group 10. It's group 10 on the Miro board. So we wrote it down. The system right now is disaggregated. There's a little conversation. And I compared it with your financial case study, or like Canada Catalyst case study, and tried to figure out, okay, which stage could be what. And we also had the similarity that this coordinated approach to providing public health is one of the first steps. And then the next step, what you said, would be a fully applied, what was it, application or something. That might be something that could be also an end product of this first midterm wave that the team is still figuring out, because there are a lot of products and different viewpoints of how this coordinated approach could look like. I hope I'm not saying anything wrong right now. So yeah, but this was quite inspirational for me, at this moment. And we have in the green thing no, it's the exnovation curve. Sorry, it's the wrong color. That would be the normative approach towards public health, paramedic response, emergency response, so that it goes away from that, but more to the bigger picture, the holistic approach. I hope I said it right.
Oh,
So
well, thank you for sharing about that, Daniel.
you're
Yeah.
welcome.
Yeah, that's helpful just to get a sense of how it was applied. Also, you know, this if people are familiar with the three horizons, whether this kind of, you know, it's not two horizons, but it is the types of innovation within those two horizons that could extend from a three horizons approach. And so we have just found that, like as Kristel said, that three horizons can take into account too long a time frames for the period of time that a CEO or a project leader or somebody who's dedicated to nearer term outcomes might have an interest. And even with the catalyst social finance, which has a long-term vision, it has now, you know, near-term implementations. And so it focuses attention on what it is that we're innovating within those impacts. So I realized that wasn't a lot of time to use it. I hope it was, you know, would be helpful at the end here, and we have a little more time for questions or for people that might like to hang out some. We'd like to hear about, you know, even honest feedback about how the tools might change the language or be clear in their presentation. I know we're kind of rushing through this, and we have one more to do. So Kristel, I think I have this one. So I took the share on this, and then we can open it up for some discussion. So the system innovation roadmap, the concept for this is also to, in a sense, to make sense of and to simplify the inherent complexity of a theory of change so that it could be used by commercial organizations and enterprises such as, well, municipalities, which may not have in their sense of mandate or their strategic plan a normal kind of theory of change for impact. There might be multiple kind of change programs that are part of a strategy, but not like as a group that is, you know, part of system change. So this is the translation of a theory of change model to more of the innovation context, so that it could possibly be used, you know, by private sector companies. And so this TOSCA, the theory of system change in action that we've developed, is a systemic theory of change. We've developed that in the book, and also outcome mapping, and they're useful for people to learn this outcome impact logic from a theory of change. And that's typical for nonprofits. It's kind of their business model pitch to a foundation, their theory of change. And multi-stakeholder organizations, it's used in the SDG programs, that is these complex theories of change, but they're not understood in business context and not understood that is a theory of change as why you would have one when, you know, you might be still, you know, as a company, what is it that you're actually changing? You're providing a service, developing a market, but maybe changing the industry might be part of that change. And that would be a different type of theory of change. So here we're focusing on innovation as a transformation process. And so, so the approach here would be that the team could work on a common change plan that would make sense in the logic of a company or perhaps other large enterprises, an institution, a university, departments. But so it could be different scales of the organization. And this could be mapped out as a theory of change that realizes an industry-wide change in the waves of innovation model. So it's set up by as a theory of change. You put in a similar way a single vision for that impact in a sticky note all the way to the right. So there's a box for that, and this is basically done like the other canvases. And you work from the present or the left forward across these 4 dimensions. And working with a lot of different logic models, theories of change, found that in the translation to industry or commercial context, there might be, different, I think there are 4 different kind of programs that can be led by different parts of the company to answer these questions. What kind of research and development is needed? What concepts are going to be developed for that impact, for that industry impact? How will you reach the marketplace? How you increase the impact? So if we actually translate this again from social finance platform, this is proposed, they have not seen this. This is just my use of the tool for the system innovation roadmap. I've mapped out, like on the left, what the roles would be. And so the color for like the board or the CEO in orange here, but I put them at the strategy level, which is at the top. So this first trajectory of impact is for developing the strategy and the impact, the strategic impact of that strategy. So you see each box has its own label, but this is all the strategy trajectory at the top, that theory of change for the impact of strategy. The next one down is capacity building, and this would be more R&D. Design would be in this development of capacities and the implementation of those capacities to support the strategy. So these may work together, but they may have their own departments in a large company. Communications and marketing supports the diffusion, or so you'd have communication specialists, but also marketing is also responsible for building the market, but also we think of sales as being different. Here it's more marketing, the diffusion of these concepts, the innovation into the industry. And then operations at the bottom could actually think of as the industry change, because in operations, you're going to be working with other suppliers and partners, the logistics of different components of how things work. And so these different colors may also then, operations may have a lot to do with the initial stages, developing even options, what's possible, developing capacities. So as you move to the right, each column is like, if you look at it from strategy, it's like the research for the strategic opportunity, the development of the strategic concept, whether it's product, service, change of the industry, developing and testing that, and going down the column to the different collaborating groups, to one to the right, then to market and network expansion. This has a lot to do also with the diffusion and its impact in the industry, and then the strategic impact, or how that might be defined. So I found that with even the Catalyst, I was able to consider the activity that might be central to each one of these positions, and that could be used as a way to then kind of manage the intra-innovation and the development of innovations and what should be expected for them. How this tool would then be used would be, you would develop a lot of more detail around this, but this could be kind of the operational, the strategic and operational plan for a multi-year program that could then be, this could be the original, kind of the initial vision for it. It could be seen as a snapshot, but you should be able to measure the impact of each one of these activities, and have a kind of, not necessarily a stage gate, but you could have kind of exit criteria for when you're done, or for when you're in the next stage in the progress for all of these. So this is new in the sense that it would be a different type of theory of change to be used in organizations that don't currently have a TOC, or don't see the need for one, but it could also be used, I think, as a roadmap process for kind of for these 16 boxes, 17, if you will, which are the minimum number, I think, of kind of a minimum number for a logic of system innovation if you were to roadmap this. So so I'd like to, so let's open it up for some questions for Kristel and I. And we'd like to just, ask you now. I realize we're at the top of the hour and people may go, but those that would like to hang out a bit and give us some feedback and give us maybe some responses to questions of, how these tools seem to work together. If you know the toolkit, these are in stages 4 and 6. How does this seem to work within the current toolkit? But maybe even more importantly, and this is something that Kinsey was speaking about, right, coming out of your breakouts. How do you see these tools used by organizational leaders if you work in those contexts? In an organizational design itself, like for actually building, high impact groups. And so what feedback might you have? So we open it up.
So, hi everyone. Maybe I'll just chime in with the first question. And well, first of all, congratulations on the new tools. It's so exciting to see. And I think, as systemic designers, we are obviously always trying to go for that wholesome impact that's across the various scales of innovation, and it's not always obvious necessarily how to accomplish that. So it's very exciting to see the new tools and that are really focusing on this area. I guess the question that I have is looking at your last tool with, as you suggested, Peter, having those 16 or 17 elements. How did you and Kristel find that process of arriving at that grammar, so to speak, at that kind of minimal language? How did you find that process of sort of investigating, what that minimal language could look like?
Well, I'd like to hear what Kristel thinks about that, but I just say that this is part of, how we do this is through an ongoing collaboration, but also identifying where we think that there are some gaps. But we're also now working on these ideas for design journeys through the organization. And I think that this is a real untapped area for systemic design, is the contribution of this kind of approach to the toolkit and this is actually very similar to what we were talking about in methodological pluralism in the previous session, that the toolkit is not meant to be used as, tool 1, 2, 3 in a series. We didn't say this, but this is how we train it, is that the methodology is almost never used in 7 stages. I mean, that's textbook, or we might train students that way. But one of the things when we train students is say, in practice, you might use 3, and if you're lucky, 4 of these stages, and therefore, and maybe 1 or 2 tools within each one, because it takes time and they have to be processed, they have to be visualized, worked into reporting. Their research, their R&D. Each tool is like an engagement session. So we're thinking about, with the value of the time that you would have in a company is kind of different than in some, like a research team or even a system change group, which may really want to go through the whole journey. Like the Catalyst has gone through quite a bit of the, a number of the tools. That's why it makes a great case. But they're not like a private company that now has to go back to work and build these things. I mean, they're building this kind of capacity over time, and they actually would have more of a theory of change. So this innovation model, this systemic innovation roadmap, I think, is something that that companies might be able to use. And so Kristel and I, also run companies. She does currently, and I have, and we work with a lot of groups and boards. And so we have to empathize with them. Those are our customers. And we have to think, what types of, how do they think about timeframes, and what language do they use, and what types of management terms are important to them, and can we use their language and then even translate that language back to systemic design? So Kristel, what would you suggest about our process, just to?
No, I completely agree. We basically put ourselves in the head of our clients, and we think like, what are the questions they have in this case by the end of a project? And so how can we help them?
Yeah,
That's brilliant.
Aswini had, I want to take a couple of other, maybe we can come back to that. So that's one question. Aswini had a question in the chat. So unless somebody, I'm looking for hands, but use your hand or the chat. And her question was about factoring in mental models and behavior change for sustainable development. And Kristel, this might actually apply across the whole toolkit. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, but especially behavioral change can be very much well used in the waves of innovation, where in the contra-innovation wave of the systemic innovation wave, you look at which behavior should be grow in the first and in the second wave, and then in the contra-innovation, which behavior do you want to work away? So that's definitely something you can do there. And then of course also in the value proposition, you can look at which value do you want to create, but then it's not the value landscape, but more the value proposition tool you would use, because it has to do a lot with social and ecological value creation and psychological.
Indeed, that's a good point, for a reason that you might use both of those as an expansion of the value proposition. From the system value proposition does have more of a focus on the individual and the relationship to the service or to the innovation that is at that center, and the value landscape more to the impact. But when you consider then, as we need sustainable development, I think that I think in different terms than the sustainable development framework, because we use these models of flourishing that we like to contrast, but we've researched and developed tools that help people contrast from sustainable development as kind of a horizon one to flourishing, which is really should be the goal of sustainability and the goal of sustainable development, which is a point that John Ehrenfeld makes a lot, and it's kind of the starting point. So we want to think beyond sustainable development to, organizations that contribute to flourishing, called the flourishing enterprise, and the outcomes of sustainable development in countries, communities, and different societies that can actually be measured for their progress toward flourishing. And so we can change the mindsets of the people leading those efforts and making the cases, getting financed for these innovations by using different tools that help their thinking for rethinking how that value is created. And Kinsey Abhay, I mentioned Kinsey had won the chat, and then I'll go to Abhay. So Kinsey, would you like to ask your question? Just speak it so that so I don't have to repeat it.
Sure. Yeah. The earlier model that you showed, I forget what you named it, but the one that looks like a bullseye. It seems like that is more static, not in a bad way. Just it seems like it's capturing a present state or current state or a state that, in my mind, would be kind of a point of departure for like starting to think about it, and a point of reference to check in compared to where you may have been developing, whereas the waves of innovation comes across as more processual and not necessarily a sequence of events, but just a trajectory. So is that a fair assessment, and is that the purpose? Because
not completely. Basically, the value landscape is not about the actual state, but it's about the desired state.
Okay.
It's the value you want to create in the ideal future. And then the waves of innovation is indeed more dynamic. How do you reach that?
Mhm.
What do you need to intronovate, exnovate, etc., to reach that desired future?
Right.
And the last
Okay.
tool is more about what is needed to support this change, to support the program.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't really add. I think that's a really good answer in terms of the waves of innovation is processual and it should be updated as more is learned. But the vision that is in the value landscape could be a very rich vision, which is why we talked about the two value propositions, but those are desired future states. So this is like stage 4 in the methodology, if you will.
Yeah. I actually think that that would be a nice way of visualizing, like even the present state that you want to get away from as a point of comparison to, okay, this is where we don't want to be. So,
We
this,
use rich context for that.
Okay.
That's in stage 1.
Okay.
So that's in framing. So, and it's helpful to have the current model of the frame that presents the trends and the problems and the opportunities in that rich context. And so that would be in stage 1, which also does have quite a bit of the tools in stage 1 are also visioning in a sense, because you can sense the gap and that we want to use, and we can also bring 3 horizons forward into stage 1.
Okay,
So,
I muted this, so I'll go back and look more closely, and I just have an overview at this point. Thanks a lot.
thank you. Kristel, would you like to take another question that you see? Or Abhay, or maybe Abhay's question?
Yeah. Peter, my question is as a follow-up to the behavior change. I would like to draw your attention to this research by social scientist Elizabeth Shove on energy use. So her framework is basically called Elements of Practice, which has 3 things: stories, skills, and stuff. So basically, she says that any social practice is, that is adopted is based on these 3 things. Stories are basically the images and the stories that you hear. Skills are basically the skills that you procedures and competencies, and the third thing is stuff, that is the objects and infrastructure. So that is how innovation comes about. So is there a toolkit? Is there a toolkit in the systemic design toolkit that is based on that is close to this approach?
Well, I don't, if you could put a link in the chat to that. I actually don't know that one, but it is very similar to Derek Cabrera's model of systems thinking, which is which is based on the different aspects of systems that you've got distinctions or boundaries and perspectives that are within those, if you will, and systems, and then the processes and the parts of those systems and those 4 can constitute the different skills of systems thinking, which he suggests we need to think of as skills. But then the way that model is used, I don't know if he actually uses the word stories, but we do talk a lot about narratives that are constructed as a result of that. And then the stuff would be the data, which is that the systems are about something. So it seems like there is that would translate to the object model, if you will, of what are the components within the sticky notes themselves. But then the stories, the narratives are what we tell visually. I mean, that's what we can construct from these visualizations. Now, Kristel, would you like to ask or add anything to them?
No, it's clear to me. You explained it. Do we
Take the next question.
All right. Thanks.
There is a question in the chat from Daniel. Daniel, are you still here?
Yes. Yeah, I was wondering what you think about like this thesis that European countries except Scandinavia and the Benelux countries still didn't understand the need for systemic design and approach, just what you're doing. Like Germany and Austria for this special where I live and where I try to get like where I'm, how do you say, testimonial for systemic design, but a lot of people are interested, but nobody is like, yeah, let's try it. But everybody's like, ah, okay, we don't know what is that exactly.
Well, it's getting picked up by universities in Germany, especially in Berlin, I think.
Yeah, I studied there systemic design, did my master's
Yeah.
there, but that's like the little ecosystem, but besides that, there's not much.
And there is also hope because there is this GRC, the Joint Research Lab of the European Union, who's very much into systemic design.
Okay.
And so they are trying to diffuse tools for systemic design to the other DGs, and hopefully this will spread. But yeah, it's a slow process. It's not an easy thing to do systemic thinking.
So Canada is more progressive in that point, is that right?
Oh, well, I'd say that the cases that I know about, perhaps it's also had a head start. I mean, the Strategic Foresight and Innovation Program was really almost unique in the world in 2008. And we started collaborating with Aho and with Birgers and Altzen by 2010 and going to each other's schools. And so the schools have graduated a number of people, like in Canada at the master's level, that have gone into practitioner programs. So all these students were like trained and ready to lead the social innovation labs around Canada. And for a while, like in this period right after 2010, like when Alex Ryan came up from the US and headed up the Alberta's CoLab. And in fact, RSD4 was sponsored by the government of Alberta and the CoLab at Banff. And so there's this whole tradition of and now I know in Holland, you've got the living labs and you've got other types of labs, but there's a good decade or so of development of these innovation labs. And then those have now, I think, translated into other models too. There are still labs, but now they're becoming like working groups and have community impact and things. So maybe it's, I haven't actually compared between different countries, but these labs have used not so much our toolkit, because the toolkit has come later than a lot of that training. They've developed their own toolkits, but now, this kind of language for how to use, systemic thinking in these mixed contexts, which are sort of mix of public and community and research, and maybe quadruple helix, maybe sometimes companies. So we're trying to move into other organizations here too.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you.